Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's so wonderful once again to engage with all you wonderful people, individuals that have a capacity for happiness, a capacity to effect change. And deep, deep down, I know all of you want to know how to manage relationships. How do I deal with that individual? Oh my gosh, he's so overbearing. Or that person that steals your time. And many of you sometimes find that very, very challenging. So it is not surprising that the topic we have chosen for our discussion today is about dealing with toxic elements. And I'm not saying you are toxic, but who knows, all of us need to do self reflection. And in the end, if we improve ourselves, it will also help us to improve our relationships. Smile, it's so good to have you here. When you hear the word toxic, what comes to your mind?
I think the word toxic means frustration, confused, worried, fear. I think that people have a lot of fear. For what? For no reason. Basically, they fear something that they think may happen, which will never happen. 99% of the things we fear never happen in life. And the only way we can really overcome fear is not to worry about the future, worry about the now. The now, if we live in the now, then Allah blesses us with a good future. Also, a lot of what you were talking about relationships, maybe the wife and husband, the relationships, they got to work together, understand each other. One of the things that I always advise young people is, or even people, the wife and husband have arguments or have frustration, is in your prayer. Look at your husband after your salah, in your sijda, anyway, and talk to him. And talk to him because you're already speaking through a different way. I mean, thoughts are viruses. Every good thought travels. The mind is a sending and receiving station of thought. So if you tell your wife or your husband, I love you, you're immediately sending him the message through another channel. And over a period, you suddenly see his behavior changing, your behavior changing. But if you argue with him or you have altercation with him, you're creating more problems. And basically, the best way is seek refuge in Allah. And one of the things that I advise everybody is read the Quran. The Noble Quran has come here with a message, a very powerful message. And that message, I mean, if you go back 1500 years ago, before the advent of the Prophet, entire Europe was in the Dark Ages. They were killing Christian churches were killing scientists. They were defecating in their houses, and they threw all the feces out into the river, and they never used to bath. The Pope used to bath once a year, and some never even bath all their lives until they had diseases on their body. Kings and even Queen Isabella admitted she never bathed. So basically, who brought hygiene? The Quran, the Noble Quran. Can you imagine the whole civilization changed only with the advent of the Noble Quran? Everything you see today here has been created by Islam. The West never admitted it. When Isaac Newton says he created gravity, nothing. He didn't do nothing. Gravity was created by Al-Razi. All the great Muslim scholars are not acknowledged.
Okay, Ismail, I just want to hold you there. I think, Alhamdulillah, you raise many, many pertinent points. I think the whole issue about being positive, the whole issue about going back to the Quran, the whole issue, and that's something, inshallah, I would perhaps implement in my life, that when you are reading your salah, you are in another space, you are so divinely inspired, and then to look at your wife with the eye of love will make a big difference. Yusuf, from what he has, Ismail has mentioned now, and in terms of your own understanding of toxic element, and Alhamdulillah, you've given it a different perspective, which is very, very healthy. In the end, it's about you, isn't it? It's about you. Yusuf?
When you look at all these different blessings that have been provided to us from our Creator, the gift of Salah, the gift of fasting, the gift of dua, etc. When you look at all of that and you understand the science behind it, the deeper meaning of it, what does it actually do for you? And now with the advent of modern science, quantum physics and quantum energy, you're starting to see that you are able to assess your body and from an energy perspective. Even a simple thing like wudu. They say when after wudu, your energy levels increase. When they say you end up in a positive state, you revitalize, refresh. Now, what toxicity does, like toxic elements in your life, brings you down. That fear, anxiety, all those feelings of fear, anxiety, worry, all those negative elements puts you in a lower state of being. And then when you pray, when you read the Quran, just even without even understanding the Quran, just they say the Arabic reading of the Quran creates a vibration in your body that puts you in a higher state. Now that is why it is so important, because every day there's going to be toxic elements in your life. That's a given.
The Arabic reading of the Quran, when you read in Arabic, it actually, the subconscious mind understands it. So basically, that's why you feel pleasant when you read in the Arabic Quran. But, I mean, that's a very good point.
Yes.
In fact, Alhamdulillah, I had no idea that this topic will go this way, but I'm so happy. This is the beauty part of having the discussion, because the knowledge comes from Allah. The whole issue, of toxicity, in terms of toxics and whatnot, right? And and I'm so glad, I didn't think about it before. You get water, pure water. It can be tainted by a little drop of urine, right? Okay. Anything for that matter, that you're watching something on television that goes against the grain of Islam, it can affect you. And similarly, in terms of relationships, there are people whose hearts are not pure. You are with them. And it depends on your own level of spirituality, how you deal with these dynamics. Otherwise, we become the products of our environment. And it is said, we do not see the world as it is, but as we are, because we are products of life experiences.
I just want to say something on that, what you talked about the water. There's studies that's been done now. I think there's a Japanese scientist that did a study on the water, and you're assessing the crystals. And there's even studies on plants, that if you, because they're all living beings, right? This is all Allah's creation. That if you be speaking to a plant in a negative way, that plant will die. But if you're positive, you see this plant flourish. Isn't that amazing?
Alhamdulillah. Munira?
Alhamdulillah. I think you've opened up this idea of positivity, as opposed to toxicity. A toxic person, unfortunately, sees themselves, him or her, as a martyr, as a victim. This often stems from narcissistic attitude towards life, where everything is about you. Now in Islam, the focus cannot be selfish, because we live in families, we live within a community, we help each other. The focus is, yes, on ourselves, but also on other people. So when you deal with a toxic person, you'd be having a simple conversation. However, the conversation is always rooted to that person. And what toxic people do in a relationship is they often put the opposite partner. It could be two brothers, it could be sisters, it could be family members, it could be friends. They put them down because they themselves have a very low self-esteem. And what then happens is the person who is emotionally intelligent, as opposed to having toxicity in them, they start feeling awkward, they feel uncomfortable, there's no room for growth in the relationship.
Okay, so I see what you're talking about, these relationships, right? And I want to get back to a point Ismail made earlier on,
Yes,
about being present. And I think, when you are present, you are able to listen to your own words. You realize what you are saying, you become self-aware, you understand a particular context. And in that way, often what happens is this, because we do not self-regulate or listen to ourselves, long after the incident, someone might tell you, you recall that one day you and I had a conversation, I don't remember. He said, on that day, you really diminished me. You get a shock of your life because you're not listening to yourself and you're not present, in that situation. I want to add to what you said, Smile, and I came across this lovely book called Boys Adrift, powerful book by Leonard Sachs, and he speaks about endocrine disruptors. He says that, they were shocked when they caught a large shoal of fish, male fish, in Potomac River near New York. These male fish, instead of them producing sperms, they're producing eggs. And they wonder what happened. So they realized there were pollutants in the water, plastics and all of those things. So it affected, the hormones, right? So you can understand, the balance, the ecosystem, everything else that goes with it, And we got to ask ourselves, for example, and it's the bottom line in the end. That's why when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked us to die before our death.
You see, there are three voices basically in here. This is what they call a chatterbox. We have to control the chatterbox. The chatterbox doesn't allow you to think.
Correct.
Now what happens is three voices. One is a voice, your own voice, and the voice of Iblis. Now sometimes we're having a discussion with Iblis without realizing.
Correct, yes.
When it's negativity, then Iblis plays a great role.
He enjoys it.
But the minute it's negativity, you go read Surah Falaq or Surah Nas.
Correct, yes.
Allah has given us those surahs to protect us from the evil whisper from within and the evil whisper from without. The evil whisper from without can be your friend. He may come and say, that person said this, he said this about you. You must immediately dismiss it. You don't want to know. It's his problem. It's not your problem.
Correct.
The minute he's speaking about you, he's hurting his own soul. Why you want to waste your soul and thinking bad about him? So the thing is, what we do, that's the biggest mistake we do, is we allow the chatterbox. Now, when you go into Salah, why does Allah says you must be present?
Correct.
You must be in the now. Because then only Allah speaks to you.
Correct.
So if you're in the present, you're clear, and you can keep your mind clear for a while, then you suddenly hear good things being told to you. I mean, you take now the Quran, we were speaking 1400 years ago. How did those people invent all the things? I mean, the world that we're living in is the world created by Islam. I mean, the first camera was created by Ibn Haytham. I mean, all these great scholars, we're not even talking about them, but they're all emerging now. People are talking about him, the lost book on the lost history of Islam. I don't call it the lost history of Islam. It is Islam, basically. You know what I mean? They try to block out that whole 1400 years of contribution, 1000 years of contribution we Muslims made. They're trying to block it out.
And irony of it all, they talk about the dark ages. No, there were no dark ages for Muslims, as it were.
Never.
And I think it's a very, very
It's medieval Europe, not medieval Islam.
Correct. I think, you know what, this is the whole point. The whole point is this, and subsuming what you are saying, it's our personal growth, It's about us investigating. It's about us learning, right, Yusuf?
Yes, look, I mean, these topics are really relevant, right? And if you look at toxicity, right, there's so many different ways it comes into your life. I mean, I think we bombarded. Again, I always bring up this issue of the world that we live in. The Western world, with all its progressiveness, technological advancements, I think from a social element, from a personal perspective, I think it has really created so much of ills of society. Media, just the media, if you just put on the television, we are bombarded with, it's like almost like there's an intent to create this fear, this anxiety, this worry. Just put on any news channel and that's what you're going to get.
Earlier on, Brother Ismail spoke about the problem and owning the problem. One way of dealing with toxic people would be to clearly examine who has the problem. If you have the problem, why should I then own your problem? And another way would be to be very assertive without being aggressive. Assertiveness is something that I find is very, very empowering in that it sets you free. And you do things for the pleasure of Allah. And if you cannot do anything, then you say, I'm sorry, I can't do it, but inshallah I will do it the following time.
Okay, Jazakumullah for that. Really, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed this very, very stimulating introduction to the first segment, Alhamdulillah. And I'm really looking forward to the second segment. I have no idea what's going to unfold, but my gosh, am I enjoying it or what?
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, once again, it's a very, very animated discussion. And to you, our wonderful viewers, when I say wonderful, it's not only because you massage our ego, but more importantly, give us feedback in terms of how we can improve, because our overarching aim and purpose is to help ourselves and to your good selves, so that all of us, inshallah, can leave a true legacy behind, that we have affected the lives of other people positively, inshallah. Munira, you were saying, in your the last segment, the issue, and I would like you to continue with it, please.
The issue of how to deal with toxic people. Firstly, we should start with setting very firm boundaries. You would be having a conversation with somebody, and this is very common in South Africa. All we hear about is the hijackings and the murders. And when you leave the area that you're having a conversation in, you would actually feel weighed down. You would feel your shoulders are stooping with all the worries of the world. And I find a lot of that is coming to the fore, where sometimes you want to sit with like-minded people and just talk about niceties, and you don't always want to talk about what is bad. So what happens then is, with people who are toxic, you steer the conversation into a direction which you would like it to take. We're not saying that you must become totally selfish, but very often you would listen to just negativity.
But Munira, I want to just stop you there for a moment, right? And I'll ask you this question. Let us say you and I, we know each other, we work in the same company, right? And you notice that I have a particular, for example, shortcoming, and that weighs heavily on you. Should you not confront me about it? They say believers are mirrors unto each other. Do you not have that responsibility? Instead of navigating away from it, you owe it to me to share that with me without hurting me. Do you not think perhaps that's the way to go?
I find, unfortunately, confrontation doesn't augur very well with too many people. If you do it in a style where it's as if you're doing conflict resolution, or you bring in an example of a third party perhaps, and you do it with lots of empathy and understanding, it could go down well with the person, Or perhaps you could say in a very nice, I'm a firm advocate of iMessages in communication.
Instead of you messages.
Yes, instead of you messages. I've been feeling a bit upset recently. I notice when we talk about this, you behave in a particular manner. Is there any way in which I could be of assistance to you?
Yes.
Instead of saying you go on like this and your behavior is like this.
But I think it stems from the fact that, and I think this is a cultural issue. I know, having been brought up also in the Indian culture, right? Is this of not wanting to offend somebody, right? Which is a good thing also, but there also is a negative element to it, right?
I agree.
Because you constantly having to please. Sometimes there could be a family member as a child that's sitting in there, and that person is critical of you, but your parents would say, no, because out of respect for the person, just accept it. So you start, and you know how powerful that is. The one word negative word you can get from a teacher or from an elder as a child, that could impact you for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
right?
but it's a point.
And limit you.
But Yusuf, it's a point. It's a very important point. And if you look at people that have grown, and you ask them, what were some of the milestones in your life? They say a teacher is not a sage on the stage, but a guide on the side, right?
Yes.
And he's a kind of individual who told you something, as they say, the hardest missile to be pelted with is the truth. And I'll just give you one tipping point for me. Ismail Katrada, he was my English teacher, he was an English inspector, and he came to the school when I was a locum. He said to me, do you mind I come listen to your lessons? It was in my early days. I said, no problem. Here am I, young and trim, and I was doing Othello, and I was so dramatic. I was using words like, I told the class, yeah, we see the external manifestation of his inner turmoil. When Iago says, I am not what I am in following him, but follow myself. And I was so excited. I was so excited, right? And I thought I was brilliant, really. I thought I was brilliant, right? I come out of the class, and he had this perplexed look. I thought he was going to shake my hands and say, wow, what a lesson. He said to me, Idris, I've got one question to ask you. Do your pupils understand you? That's what he told me. Really? And like a little boy, I said, I don't know. I went to the class and I asked the class, I said, they don't understand me. Were it not for that feedback, I would have continued a complete year in that particular class were not being understood, right? And that feedback, harsh though it was when it first impacted on me, it was an eye-opener. And that's important. That's very, very critical. And the point that you make, and I want us smile about this, the whole thing they say, believers are like mirrors unto each other, is such a beautiful metaphor, because subsumed in that metaphor is the fact that you acknowledge the good when people do it. And then when you recognize an area for development, it becomes more palatable.
Well, our biggest problem is ego, you see.
Yes.
When you correct a person, his ego takes over. The thing is, he doesn't look objectively as to what you are saying. And our attitude should be one of, firstly, we should live with an attitude of gratitude all the time. And we should be grateful when a person comes and points, corrects us. And the way our sister has said that use yourself as an example, or ask if I do. So whatever, the mannerisms, how you ask, I like the way you mentioned. That is one of the things we should do. The second thing, the person who's being asked should look at it very objectively. And that's the sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We should look at everything objectively. Problem is that we're a non-reading community.
No doubt.
It's
That's
very
all
sad.
very sad.
I mean, look, when Muslim books are published, they sell in the thousands. When other books are published, they sell in the millions. I mean, we say to ourselves now, what are we doing? We were the nation, we were the builders of civilization. We've gone back so far that we don't even read.
Yes, that is true.
I mean, we don't want to read, we don't want to, our egos are a problem. And that's what's creating the big, like for instance, the criticism we have one against the other, one group against the other group. What is it? The one thinks they're right and the other thinks they're right. Why don't they sit down and debate it? No, but they'll speak outside
correct.
that that's a Shia, that's a Sunni. Come on, guys.
Yusuf?
Yeah, look, this, I mean, coming back to the issue of the topic, toxicity. And I think from a perspective of how we can ensure that, especially our children, and I was bringing that point up earlier, right? It is so important to be providing positive messages. When a child does something, acknowledge it, encourage it, because otherwise later in life, right, you have these limiting beliefs.
By acknowledging it, you are actually building your self-esteem.
Yes, fundamental.
Because that's one of the major reasons, this ego thing we're talking about, is that the truth of the matter is, why do people criticize? Why do people project toxicity? Is because of their lack of, because of their self-esteem.
They low self.
Right.
Correct, yeah, that's true. That connection is there. There you have it. I tell you, time is going so fast, yeah, alhamdulillah, right? And I'm so excited. The whole issue really is, and I think it's a critical point, that people who are toxic are people who have low self-esteem because they have not have self-acceptance. If you do not accept yourself, then you become suspicious, you become an irritant in the lives of other people, right? So, inshallah, we'll be back immediately after this.
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the things that I often speak about, and I hope I live by this, is that we're supposed to learn from the mistakes of other people. And one of the stories that you need to engage with is rather with aged people. And you ask them, what are some of your regrets? And they'll share with you, you know. And ironically, I say to people, you know what your regrets are going to be, but why don't you do something about it now? And you notice that in this interaction, we have raised many, many issues about going back to the Quran. You know, of course, one of the books that, Alhamdulillah, that Brother Ismail wrote is called Unleashing the Power of Almighty. Very, very powerful, very, very powerful. And I would recommend that you read this book. And what it does basically, connecting you to the infinite source, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshallah you can do what is beautiful. Now, we got to ask ourselves this question: why is it? Why is it? There are some individuals, and we speak to them about, with them about love. It could be in our family. They are just negative about everything, have nothing good to say about anyone, right? And they are, you know, draconian in the measures. They do not know even how to show love. They do not even know to show gratitude and generosity, right? Do you think they are the products of the media, as they say, whoever controls the media controls your mind? Or perhaps we, as the custodians, as the parents, perhaps we're not doing some things correctly.
It could be that you see the upbringing of the person. What his father did to him, he just becomes a habit he does to the next generation. Basically, that's what's happening. You see an angry mother or angry husband or angry father, is because just go back. So what I would advise that person who gets angry, go back and look at your father and your mother and see the mistakes they made. Review them and then realize that you're making the same mistake because you didn't like your father saying certain things to you. So you don't realize that you are doing the same thing to your child. You're destroying his character.
At the same time, though, I mean, I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us such that we all have goodness in us and we have an ability to be even worse than an animal. That is the uniqueness of mankind, right? Yeah. Now, what has happened is we have, and Allah at the same time gives us an example. You talked of, He's given us a gift of the Quran with all the beautiful principles of living life and an example in the Prophet ﷺ. Now, it's up to us as individuals. Yes, we've all been dealt a certain life as parents, maybe abused, and people might have been abused, and that's why they act the way they do. Whatever it may be, some people in a better home, but we still have that choice. Yes. No matter what, we still have that choice.
I think it's an important point, but sometimes you are unaware that you are a product of that experience. Yes. Therefore, what psychologists say, you're suffering from post-traumatic stress. Once you understand this has happened in your past, because the point that, I agree with both the points, the point that Smiley is making, that it becomes a vicious circle instead of it being a virtuous circle. It becomes a virtuous circle when there's intervention, when you yourself realize, you know what, I've reached the age of discretion and age of maturity. Why should I replay that? Instead of reversing it, we tend to rehearse it.
Yes, but you see, the choice I want to say is, the choice is, you have a choice of positivity or negativity. Correct. Now you choose. Even though you might have come from a negative environment, right, okay. The choice is, and this is from the time of why do they say, surround yourself with those that are from a spiritual element? Why? Because when you go there, it's going to rub off onto you. So you have that choice. You can go, even though you've had a negative, go and surround yourself with the elders, those that are learned, read, as you said. Right? These are still all the choices. Go and pray more often, so that when you're doing all of that, all that positive spirituality starts rubbing off. So yes, your past is your past, but it's about living in the present. And because of those choices you make every day. Look, let's be honest. Every morning we get up. Don't we all feel some negative thoughts? Don't we all feel down? Right? Now, if we don't, you have a choice. You can get up in the morning and you can pray the Fajr, or you can sleep. But after you do that prayer of Fajr, don't you feel so much better?
Yes.
So those are the choices we all have.
I agree with what Yusuf is saying. And I'm a firm advocate of this as well, of positivity in your life. And coming back to what Brother Ismail said earlier about the parents and the cycle with the children, you'd find very often that toxic people have narcissistic behavior. And that stems from their parents, because when their parents are totally self-absorbed, children base their behavior on what they've learned from the role models. So they just model themselves on their parents again. And coming back to what Yusuf was saying earlier about people who don't want to make the positive choice, there is a payoff in there for them. And the payoff is that they're martyrs, and they poor me, and they feel sorry for themselves. No matter how much they may have, they do not have this attitude of shukr. And
It's a
that
victim mentality.
it is poor me. That is their payoff. Poor me. It's always shame. You know, I go through this. I go through that. It only happens to me. What they don't see, it happens to everybody.
Correct.
The choice you make with your life experiences is what determines you. It's what defines you.
Also, the people that say, why me? They basically, some of them even says, you know, these are tests from Allah. Allah doesn't want to punish you. Nowhere does Allah speaks that He's going to punish you if you're doing good. He'll only punish you if you're doing wrong. So basically, I mean, the biggest problem is, we said a while ago, is reading. I keep repeating this. The person who does not read is no difference to a person who cannot read. So which means, open that book. Go home, open that book. Open Allah's book and see what Allah says. Nowhere does it say that He's going to punish you. He's merciful. He'll forgive you. He always wants good for you. But we punish ourselves by our thoughts and the way we behave. And
I mean, it's a point.
That is, you know, I just want to say something that is so powerful. It's again coming back to your thoughts, right? It's how you perceive that event that's taking place.
Yes.
So even, and this is as critical as even a loss of a child. I mean, that would be, I mean, think about that. They say if you have to bury a child, that's probably the most painful thing. But if you have faith and you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of everything, He knows why He does what He does, that in itself can have an impact in your life in a different way. Maybe that brings you closer to Allah. Right? Because ultimately at the end of the day, we all have to go into the next world. But that in itself brings you closer to Allah, because now you get... So if we accept that everything that happens in our life, right, but we look at it from a perspective that this is Allah's will, right, and we see it, when I say in a positive, even a challenge, we see it in a positive way, then we are able to transcend. But if we allow the event to consume us, to keep us in that negative spirit, all that will happen, and I mean that is in your book, you will attract, if you're in a negative state, that's the law of attraction, right?
Yeah.
That's a rule of the universe. If you're in a state of negativity, you will attract more negativity in your life. If you're in a state of positivity, you attract more
The
positivity.
mind is a sending and receiving station of thought. So if you send good thoughts, you'll attract good people. You send bad thoughts, you'll attract bad people. If you are scandalous, you'll attract scandalous people. They'll be your company all the time. They say, you heard this, you heard this. And this is so very important that we must understand that our thoughts, that is where everything begins. As you were saying about choices, man has a choice in life. Woman, we have a choice in life. And if you take the right choice, you'll have a beautiful, happy life.
Moira, you were saying?
Yes. Also, you were talking earlier on about events and your reactions to them, and interpretation of events. You know, if somebody walks into a room, like if I can share something with you, I was at work the one morning, and my manager walked in, and I said, "Morning, how are you?" And she walked out. And for me, it was, what have I done? The first thing, you start examining yourself. And later, when I went upstairs to the office and I said to her, are you okay? You seem a bit disturbed this morning. And she said to me, and she broke down completely. She said to me, my daughter's going in for an operation. And then I thought, oh my word, that is why she was troubled this morning. It wasn't anything I had done. So your interpretation of an event, and that was a lesson I took from there.
In fact, Munira, I would even add this point, that you must make excuses for people's behavior. We suffer for a lot of other people's inadequacies as well.
That's a very powerful one.
We stay awake at night You must have good opinion.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
if, for example, I tell people, if I walk into a room, the two people who are whispering, they stop whispering. I say, you know, they're feeling shy to say good things about me.
Yes.
Because you know what?
Interpretation.
You know what I am
Yes.
saying? You know, the ummah is bleeding. And you worry about pettiness. You worry about your ego. What he thinks. You must worry what Allah thinks about you. That's the most critical thing. And you know, it's very, very powerful, this, you know.
You know,
Yes.
I think there's one of the imams was saying this, I was reading somewhere, says that we all have we're talking about good and bad. We have so many of our own faults and inadequacies that we have to work on. Even now, Sahaba were working on it all the time to improve themselves. That spending 1 minute worrying about the next person is a minute that you could have spent to improve yourself.
That's profound.
Huh?
That's profound.
Yes.
Really.
What can I say? You know, I don't say it too loud. It's amongst one of the best interactions I've had. Really, alhamdulillah. May Allah bless you. And inshallah, I'm confident that you are reflecting. You're nudging your wife. Hey, it's about you. You got your children there, because in the end, what we want your home to be a sanctuary, a place in which you inspire your children to read. You know, reading parents beget reading children, right? And that's powerful. Open your minds like a portable universe. You can travel to any part of the world. You can participate vicariously to the lives of other people. Get to know the life of the Sahaba. Of course, most important to understand the Quran. We'll be back immediately after this.
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sometimes, you know, as parents, the Amir of the home, the Amira of the home, we sometimes forget the profound impact you can have in the lives of your children. We often say what's happening to our children. Perhaps we too need to reflect on our parenting styles, inshallah. Ismail, I just want to add to one point that you mentioned. It's, you know, when you spoke about the issues, the kids, the past and whatnot, I was dealing, Munira, this would resonate with you, with a particular case where this youngster is, I call him a youngster, he's 45 years old. He did not have a happy marriage. And it so happened, Allah willed it that I go to the house when the father and son were having a massive argument. Massive argument. Then they felt embarrassed. The father moved away and the son is agitated. I have not met him in my life. So I tried to calm him down, you know. And when he began to speak, he says, man, why should I follow my father? He's a pathetic example. The way he treated my mother. I will not forget one day when I was supposed to wait in this corner when I was a student at school, a scholar. I was waiting in another corner. My father hit me so much in front of my peers. I despise him, I hate him, I don't want to stay in that house. You know what I'm saying to you? So a lot of that anger, the agitation, right, is manifested now, right? And he says, I care two hoods. And I think it's important, very, very important to everyone. You know what? There's a reason why people get angry. There's a reason. No one is born intrinsically evil. No one is born to hate you. Find out maybe some things we need to do differently. For Jazakumullah, you know, it really reminded me of this particular incident, right? But as a takeaway, you know, to the viewers, in terms of, you know, essentially what we are saying is how to manage your life. How can you ensure, inshallah, you unleash your potential? That people around you, how do you manage people with different backgrounds? Some people, you know, with some toxic elements, as it were. What do you do? In the end, it's easy to point at others, but it's important for us to look at ourselves, look at our own tazkiyah, our own self-purification.
Well, my advice firstly is the first thing any family must do is get together, read the Quran together as a family. Read in Arabic and in English. So what are you doing? You're creating harmony in the family. That's one. Two is also remember our attitude to our children determines their attitude towards us. So if we speak to our children kindly, they will respond kindly. Third one is there's a television program called Simpsons. And that Simpsons, the person who created this television program said he wants to create anarchy in the home, which means he wants undisciplined children. You must remember, the greatest threat Western civilization has is Islam. And therefore, they're coming into our homes. We got Iblis right there in our home. Watch what programs we watch. Watch programs like the one that Brother Idris has encouraged here today. These are the programs that we should watch. In conclusion, Simpsons, in a comical way, they're actually subliminally brainwashing your child. You don't know they're creating anarchy. So these are the few things. Let's start off with this, inshallah. And with the help of Allah, we'll change our lives.
No, inshallah, just to add, the earlier points that you raised about being present, about looking at your spouse through the eye of love, especially after you've been inspired through your salah. And these are very, very practical things. And the whole issue of, once you read salah together, Allah's barakah will descend in that home.
I believe make a jamaat, at least one jamaat a day.
Yeah.
You can go to the mosque, but whenever you make it, don't make it alone, make it together. Even if it's you and your wife and one child, fine. And even if your child is small and running around, let him run around because he's already seeing you praying and he's learning. I mean, you must remember a child from the age of, while a child is in the mother's womb, it's already learning.
That is true.
Therefore, it's important for you to read the Quran in English or in Arabic. That child is already being, you'll notice when that child is born, that child is born pleasant. It's a pleasant child because you've already started working on that child. So our children learning from a very young age, give them that environment.
Just a quick thought, I'll say, end it off here. I mean, people forget that even in the fetus, the profound impact your relationship with your spouse has. In fact, there is someone I know in Cape Town, is a friend of mine. He can do what you call a regression. He can take you back into your mother's womb. And he said he had 2 experiences, and over the phone he can help you. He said to me, one of them was a girl, and she said, I can hear my father and mother upset that I'm a girl and not a boy. Look at that. And the other one, the opposite. So the profound impact. So, children learn by what they see, what they feel, Yusuf?
Look, as a person that's put onto this earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a gift, and He only wants us to be successful. That is what He put us on.
Absolutely.
Each one of us that's put on this earth. It is our choice that we make that brings us to the end of our life. And when I was reading something that said the definition of hell is when the person that you were meant to be meets the person you are on those last days.
Powerful.
Now you ask, if there's a delta between that, then that was your choice. But Allah only wants the best from you. So you got to get in tune with yourself, get in tune with your Creator, and understand. And when you do that, there's synchronicity. Things open up for you because that was what was meant for you. That is where the taqdeer comes in, that fate, that you were meant to live the greatest life possible. And the choice is in your hands with all these tools that have been spoken about. And you make those choices every day.
Be kind to people. I think that's, very, very important. Because if you're the type of person that puts people down, that makes them feel miserable, eventually there'll be nobody left to be with you. If you look at the sunnah of our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he was kind to people who threw dirt on him. He was kind to people who was nasty to him. And as we know, as Muslims, we are put on this earth to follow in his footsteps. So for me, it is that try and be nice to people who are also, going through their own problems. They have their challenges. They have situations that they cannot deal with. However, if it becomes overbearing, if you are spending sleepless nights worrying about people who are so-called dumping on you, then it is time, unfortunately, to take a step back, to look at the relationship and to say to yourself, is it worth carrying on in this manner? Let's change the dynamics of this relationship. Let's be upfront with that person and say, I cannot handle it anymore. I don't want to be in your company. Perhaps you can go for professional help. Because really, when you're loading your problems onto me, I feel helpless because I can't do anything to help you. So perhaps seek professional help, and maybe that will improve your life. And also people have choices. You can either curl up and die, or you can choose to get up and go and do something good for your people, for your community, for Islam.
I think the issues that you are raising are so fundamental. It reminds one to live with intentionality, to live consciously, to be present, go back to the Quran. It's about what we're supposed to do in the first place. Because, contentment of heart comes from those things, from your own purity, to feel happy for someone else's success, to go there. I know this is a personal, maybe a bit mundane. I remember in the earlier days when I was getting into public speaking, sometimes you're sitting there listening to a khutbah and the shaitan whispers, it says, Idris, I think that topic you should have been there, But I tell to the shaitan, you shut up. And what I do consciously, I'll wait for the person to finish. I'll tell Maulana, whoever, I really enjoyed your talk. Allah bless you. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I'm perfect or I'm the paragon of virtue. We are growing.
Progress.
We are growing. And I get
There's a two-letter word that's the most powerful word in the world. It's no.
yes.
It's no to all negativity. No to anybody that impacts you. No to the iblis in you. No to those negative thoughts.
You must forgive me for if I get a bit emotional, because I deal with issues in our families. We have become very, very sad families. It just requires an attitudinal change. The father coming home, showing love, hugging your spouse, hugging your children. Why should they be afraid of you? The mother, show the maternal love for the children. Create a sanctuary, a place of happiness. Let your home be like a laboratory. Start reading. Have a culture of reading, a culture of excellence. And say, you know what? The Quran is clear. Save yourself and your family from the fire of hell. That's the bottom imperative. We're not saying that you're going to shun this world, but use the world to, inshallah, unleash your potential. And I'm saying to you, all of you, my beloved brothers and sisters, you can do it. It requires an attitudinal change. May Allah bless you, protect you. May today be a tipping point in your life, because the Ummah needs you. The Ummah is bleeding. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.